Hello and welcome back. Before we get started, of course, as always, make sure you like, subscribe, leave a comment, watch till the end if you can. If you want to support us, you can follow us at RadarPod on all of the apps and websites. We have a Patreon. We have support tiers for $2, bonus content for anything above $5, and a special subscription tier for ads. So if you own a small business or are working on a project and you want to promote it, you can subscribe to our sponsor tier for $100 a month and you get a custom ad for your business or project. We also have merch, a lot of good merch. We have shirts, we have stickers, we have mugs. The mugs are my favorite. And we'll have more coming soon. Also, we'll have exclusive discounts for anyone who is in the VIP tiers of the Patreon. And I think that's about everything. So enjoy the episode. Welcome back. Today we have Andrés. I immediately forgot.
That's okay.
Taboada.
Yeah.
Who you were on our old show, Poquito,
That's right,
before.
Poquito, yes.
How you been?
I've been good, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me.
You're actually the first guest I've had so far that's not autistic.
Oh wow!
And I feel like that's going to be confusing to some people because it's called It's a Spectrum, and I usually forget to explain. The title's meant to be ironic.
Yeah.
What like drives the show for me is like constantly having to explain myself to people. Like I have to explain, we're not all on the spectrum. Some of us are, some of us aren't. The spectrum is not a gauge for, how autistic somebody is. It's just a criteria of symptoms. So that's kind of like why I wanted to do a show like this. It's not meant to be specifically like what is autism, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's more meant to be like a space for people to talk about concepts that are known like in society but aren't necessarily understood.
Okay.
And so I'm kind of excited.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me.
I
I guess despite not being autistic, I guess, but I also it just gives me a place to like just talk about the things I do have, which is a bunch of things, but one of them being I have Tourette syndrome, as you know,
right.
And late diagnosed in my mid-30s, really. So yeah, no, it's always cool to talk about it, and it's something I'm learning about myself still, so
right.
So that's and that's always an interesting subject for me, and so happy to be here.
And that's usually where we start with like the first question I usually ask is like, can you tell us a little bit about your journey with your diagnosis?
Sure. So let's see, I'm from Peru, and I was really good in school up until 4th grade, I think it was. And recently I just learned also that, I was good because I didn't have to study or memorize that much. It was just
right.
Like you went to math class, I would get it, and that's it. You do well in math, right? So I was always high performing. And then in 4th grade, when I started to have to start studying history and read and review the material before a test, that's when my grades started going down. Now, I never had bad grades, but I definitely were not as good as they were back then. So that now I understand why that is, but my whole life I wasn't sure really.
Right.
And back then also it was like, oh, Andrés is the smart one, and there's so much pressure for being. That's another thing I learned I'm also a parent, so you're not supposed to tell kids actually how smart they are.
Right.
It's actually bad it could be potentially bad for them, because then when they can't do something, they're like, oh my God, I'm not smart. Like they can be really hard on themselves for it. So yeah, it was ADHD. Now looking back, it was ADHD, which a lot of people with Tourette syndrome have. And then So I also in fourth grade it was also the time where so what would happen is I will make myself vomit before school. Like every morning I would just vomit out of anxiety, right? And sometimes I would do it so as a way to like not have to go to school. I would actually make myself vomit so I wouldn't have to go to school. And looking back, and it was just anxiety, it was social anxiety, you know, just not wanting to deal with a lot of people. Even though I am an extrovert and I like socializing, the fact that I was also like, I was just intimidated by the whole scene. I was the smallest kid in my class too. My household was very unstable, emotionally speaking, household. So it was a lot of that. And then as I grew up, again, same thing. I would do okay in school, like I'm gonna say like B average, but for me to study I would have to like wait until the night before or the day off. Actually, what I would do is I would wake up at 2 a.m. and study until 7 a.m. And that's how I did not only high school but also all of college and grad school as well. Everything was that way. And not until I was 35 probably did I come here to LA from, I moved all over the world, but I moved here from Miami after grad school, back to California and then Los Angeles. And I remember watching a YouTube video when I was like 35 or something. And they were talking about Tourette syndrome. And it was a bunch of kids with Tourette syndrome. And what I knew about Tourette's is what most people think Tourette's is, which is, you know, saying, cursing out loud, saying bad words, you know, the comedic aspect of Tourette's that gets seen in movies, you know, which I get it. I mean, there it is. And my Tourette's, I think, is funny too. And that's what I thought it was. So it never clicked for me that, I may have Tourette's, until I saw that video and then I saw a kid who had exactly the same tics that I have.
Right.
So, and I like all of them. He had the blinking, the neck twitching. And by the way, when you talk about Tourette's, also like it triggers it. So right now I'm doing it more. With people are going to be actually like, some people might be surprised by it because you kind of live your life. I think it's called masking, right? You can live your life masking it because you know that's otherwise people ask questions. So, and it wasn't like self-conscious, like, oh my God, I need to suppress my Tourette's or people are going to think I'm weird. I've never been self-conscious about my Tourette's. I think it's just like I just kind of knew that, okay, we're going to do an interview, so time to not do it. Or I'm going to do stand-up and it's time to, like, you know, chill out. But then I would address it during my stand-up back when I used to do it. And because it was just unavoidable. I could only hold it in for so long. So eventually I would do this and then I would ask people if they notice, and we would have like a laugh about it. So yeah, 35. I see this video. I get diagnosed. I see this video. I immediately make an appointment. Luckily, I had health insurance at the time. And then I saw a neurologist. I sat down, and before I even said anything, he's like, "You have it." Like it's so obvious that you have Tourette's.
Right.
They normally prescribe, it is anxiety induced. So they normally, what they do is they prescribe anxiety medication, which turns out usually to be antidepressants, which may help it. It didn't help me at all for Tourette's. And also I don't need it to be helped, to be honest. Like I'm fine having Tourette's. So it's never really worked against me, the tics themselves, you know. Maybe I only had one time that when there was like a match with a girl on Tinder, and then she was like, I matched with her on Stir, which is like this app for like single parents, and then we did like a chat, and I think we were just texting back and forth, and I said, and she wanted to see me, and you know we were getting along well, and we had a phone call, and then I guess I mentioned that I have Tourette's, and she was like, oh shit, I have to actually have Tourette's too. Right. And I want to have more kids, and I don't want them to have Tourette's, so we're done. So we never, that's the only time Tourette's has like counted against me. And also like, I couldn't even be mad at her. I was like, you know what? Yeah, it's a perfectly legit reason. So that's the only time where it has like, I guess, been like an obstacle, I guess, in that sense. However, that's the tics. Now, when it comes to everything that comes with Tourette's, which is, again, anxiety, ADHD, depression, irritability, all that shit, that's the hard part, you know?
Right.
The tics are the least of my worries. So it's all the other symptoms that come along with it that are the tough thing to deal with. Yeah.
No, yeah, I get that. I actually didn't realize that part about it because that's something that we have in common. I also have ADHD.
Yes.
And that's the thing that's like growing specifically with ADHD, but in general with neurodivergency is like I think current medically accepted term is comorbid, but there's also people that say coexisting.
Got it.
My friend Danny uses a specific phrasing, co-opted.
Okay.
No, not co-opted. That means something different. I can't remember right now, but I'll remember later. Having more than one disorder at the same time, you know, and people used to think it was rare to the point of impossibility, but like the more we learn about all of these disorders, the more we can see like how not only can they coexist, but often one will hide the symptoms of the other.
Yes.
Like I have 3 coexisting main diagnoses. I have a bunch of smaller ones, but the 3 main ones are autism, ADHD, and obsessive compulsive disorder.
Yes.
And I think that's like another interesting aspect of like, I don't know what the current information says about the connection between Tourette's and ADHD. I know that my OCD is kind of influenced and manifested from my ADHD.
Yeah.
Like, I was a forgetful kid. I was a clumsy kid. And so that led to enough situations that my brain sort of programmed itself to be concerned about those things.
Yeah.
And then I become concerned about everything. So I do, you know, from a different aspect, kind of understand where you come from about like the anxiety being a trigger for certain things.
Yeah, the ADHD. And also, and I think the ADHD also can influence the depression or cause the depression or whatever. There's that too, right? And so that's addressing the ADHD helps with that. I mean, it's also weirdly related, and also I'm not sure how at the same time. And this is a legit question. So because I have everything that I've explained to you, would I be considered to be on the spectrum or not?
No, and that's something that
that's good. That's good.
You know, there's spectrum in itself is a term that's just used to explain variety.
Okay.
So there are some people that refer to neurodivergency as a concept as a spectrum.
Okay.
But that. Well, I don't do that. It's not bad to use that, but that is a completely separate concept from the spectrum.
Yeah.
The autism spectrum.
Yeah, I've never claimed it, by the way. I was just wondering if anybody would. I guess
it is. Yeah. There's definitely some people that do think they're the same. I've seen people take the image of a spectrum chart, which is like how we gauge our symptoms with autism, and replace the actual criteria with like ADHD, autism, bipolar disorder.
Got it.
And it's like they're not all. Yeah, they're not the same thing, but they can coexist. Like there's people that have autism and then have one of these other things.
Got it. One thing I wanted to add also is that when I was little, my tics were so subtle that pretty much unrecognizable, and not until my mid-30s, exactly my mid-30s, is that they went crazy, and that is. It's actually a common thing. I didn't know that. I thought we had Tourette's. You always had Tourette's, but turns out there's like and I joined a Facebook group that is adults with Tourette syndrome and late onset Tourette syndrome. So that's why it took so long for me to also realize that I had it, because for a time I thought I didn't have it because there were, I would do weird things with like my tiny little tics. I just thought I was a little twitchy kid and that's it. And what's weird too is also that there's people from high school that I've known all my life that now they see me and I'm putting myself on camera more because I'm promoting this movie that I did, and I'm doing more videos on my own. I'm gonna launch my own podcast soon as well, and I'm trying to do it without. I used to edit around my tics before, so because you can do that, but now I'm trying not to edit, just because that lets me put out more content, and so now people are seeing my tics. They're more visible now, and they're like, "What happened to you?" Because they didn't see them before. I didn't see them either, but now I have them. So one of my friends got really worried. I was like, dude, are you like on something? Like, are you taking anything? So it's just been a fascinating experience to explore that I'm still exploring. I'm still learning.
No, yeah, that's something that I say a lot with any disorder. Like, people are, and like I explained before, like that's another thing that's like why I do this show specifically is like, people only understand a concept in its most extreme example.
Yes.
So
exactly.
and I do think that that's also from what I've seen, through. I don't have Tourette's. I'm not part of that community, but I did research for this. For this episode, that is like one of the things that leads to misdiagnosis is when you like in children, it is more noticeable when it's to the extreme. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like you said, like you don't really have verbal tics, and so that's like one of the reasons why I was like,
it's weird. Except when I'm by myself or when I think I am by myself, that's when the Tourette's. That's when my verbal tics do come out. Right. So whenever I remember something embarrassing, I'll say, shut the fuck up, like just not very kind to myself, but I'll do that. I yell at myself sometimes, and sometimes say some really bad words, really, messed up words that I shouldn't be saying. It's scary in the fact that I think I'm by myself, but my window may be open, and then people hear it, and I don't want people to think I'm saying that to my son, like that's my biggest fear. That I think I'm saying it to my son is like the worst things imaginable, and then and chances are, no, for sure, my son is nowhere near me when I'm saying those things. It's just me to myself on the days that I don't have him. Actually, that's how much I go about it. I guess masking in my own home, even right. Because I think one time I did say, shut the fuck up. And my son was like, Papa, are you okay? What happened? Like he thought he had done something. I'm like, but he knows now. Like, I don't know. His name is Tiago. No, I have Tourette. So, so sometimes I say things that, that mean for no reason at all. And so now he understands. He's only 6, but he is fully aware of Tourette's and what that means and what that can do. And, it's he's super cute about it, and it's now it's like it's normalized in my home, right? So I don't have to be so scared to say something or do something when my son is around, because he knows me. I'm still scared because my neighbors, you don't talk to your neighbors. I mean, they're in my complex, but I've never talked to a single one of them. That's not true. I've talked to them, but they don't know me. So I'm scared that they hear something I say and they're like, oh my God, what is this guy's yelling at his son? Like that's like my biggest fear. And those are the things that I guess I deal with when it comes to Tourette syndrome. And then I was in a Zoom meeting at work, and these are people I have worked with for years. And I guess I mask it more. And this time she was like, what's with your neck? And I was like, no, I have Tourette syndrome. And then they feel horrible. And they're like, no, don't feel bad. Like, trust me, I get it. Like, you don't notice it until you do. And then it's like, so please don't feel bad. So those are the day-to-day things, I guess.
Yeah. Sorry.
No, I don't even know what we're talking about, to be honest.
No. I had a thing prepared, and
I took it somewhere else. Two people with ADHD fucking.
It's a thing of like, it's one of my executive dysfunction struggles of like. Practicing interviewing, like, in the past I was always sort of the secondary host, and even in the last show, like me and Dominic worked on the show together, but he took the wheel because he had more experience with like what we were trying to accomplish.
Well, you do a great job, just so you know. I've been watching some of the episodes of this. You're doing a great job, and also. And by the way, I love the Un Poquito podcast. Like I do miss it because I think it was a great podcast. Yeah. You guys are all funny. You're hilarious, by the way.
Thank you.
And it's so funny, how you're on stage versus off stage. My immediate assumption always is that people don't like me. So with you, the first time we met, you didn't do the podcast, right? And then you were outside. We were all so quiet. I'm like, man, Ryan doesn't like me. But that's me and my own bullshit, Like I know, like I'm so sensitive, and it's just ridiculous. What I was gonna say is that the difference with this podcast that you're doing is like it's so. Like for the first time I've watched that podcast that you're doing, and I was like relaxed, dude.
Right.
You were doing it with this girl. She had blonde hair. She was here recently, and I listened to the whole thing, man. And I was like, it's like this, like peace,
Right, yeah.
And so that's pretty cool, man. Yeah. So no, I think you're doing really great. So
was that Lara? I think so. I'm trying to remember. Yeah. I'm pretty sure she's the only blonde person we've had on.
Yeah. He's the only blonde person you've had. So definitely her.
That was an interesting thing, because one thing me and her talked about on our episode, I think this was before the episode, was like
the underwater thing.
through this podcast and through stand up, I've been finding a lot of other people that are neurodivergent who I didn't know. And it was a funny thing because I talked to them and I found out that I was a lot more reclusive when I first started out. Like, and it's a funny thing of like, we could have been friends the whole time. We have all this stuff in common.
Exactly.
But I wasn't good at talking to people. And that's something that actually like doing stand up and doing shows has improved with me. And that's what I was saying before was like, I do still have this thing where the part of my brain that's trying to listen is fighting with the part of my brain that's trying to prepare for my response.
Yes.
So that's why I brain farted earlier.
No. And then again, first of all, in stand up also, I mean, there's so many people that have something going on. It's a very interesting community, you know. Also, you and I have never really met in person other than the last time. This is actually the second time only we meet in person. The first time I met you, even though I've seen you on video and stuff, and we have a lot of friends in common. The first time I met you was during the pandemic when we were doing Ramon Hernandez Mexican candy thing, and we would just do these meetings from time to time and kind of try out jokes or whatever. That's the first time I met you. You and Dominic. I didn't even know you guys were related at first. And then the second time, and I know you were doing the Chatterbox a lot, and again, so funny. And then I met you, or maybe we did a Mexican candy show together too. And then last time there, and then this time. So we haven't really interacted that much. Yeah. And again, I need to first of all, I think it's normal for the different types of people with autism, but not making eye contact and maybe needing your own space before a social interaction. It is to be expected, kind of. So it's absolutely people like myself needed to get off our own bullshit too, not take it so personally. You never know what somebody's dealing with.
That's so funny that you just reminded me of what I was gonna say when I brain farted. Because you were talking about how you sometimes are concerned about having tics in public, around your child. And that's something that that's a sentiment that I can understand and that I share, being specifically because of my ADHD and my OCD, because sometimes I space out or sometimes I become over anxious. I have a lot of, I have a different kind of, I have negative stims. And so how that's evolved for me personally is coming to an understanding where there's things that I can't help. Yeah. There's things that are going to happen. I don't know what causes them all the time or I don't always know in the moment how to prevent it. So all I can do is understand, try to understand what is happening and learn more about what leads to it and what am I saying?
That's fine.
Because I've talked about it before, but I'm usually quicker about it. It's a thing of establishing a boundary where I know what is and is not my fault.
Yes, that's great.
Having to uphold that with people. Yeah. Like you were saying, sometimes you have to explain at work. Sometimes I'll space out or I'll start doing something that disrupts the recording and it's been a minute since this happened. This is actually the first show I did long time about Isimo. It's a thing I've talked about before where sometimes because I was still learning to be on screen and to be social more consistently, I would have a lot of executive dysfunctioning and a lot of sort of brain farts and I'd have to explain, I get how frustrating this is from a production standpoint. There's nothing I can do about it.
Yeah. And please, if anything, I'll get distracted all the time, and I'll change the subject, and so, and also I need to be better about that in general in my life. I think how people perceive me is a very concerning thing to me. Yeah. And that's just really a ridiculous way to live. It just does me a lot of harm to constantly worry about that stuff. And of course, we're comedians too. I don't want to generalize, but we want to be liked, you know. And there's a reason where we're getting up on stage in front of a bunch of strangers, asking them to love us through laughter. You know, like there's something wrong there. But that also makes an amazing art form. But yeah, I'm definitely working on that in general. I remember I used to think. I don't drink anymore, and I've never really had a problem with drinking, but I remember me worrying about so much the next day, what I may have said, and how people may have had. I had so anxiety the next day after drinking, and maybe 2 days after, and then remembering, and then my tics will kick in, and shut the fuck up, you know, because I was like so embarrassed of something I may have said. Alcohol just lowers inhibitions, and then maybe I felt less of a need to be masking, maybe, and it didn't help the situation, but I guess it just makes you less concerned about how we're being perceived at that moment, and that's what will make me so anxious the next day. And I think this has been talked about here before, but for a while I would I enjoy having my phone with my headphones on with nothing playing. Like I'll do that sometimes too, and I will get easily distracted with the phone. So that's something I have to watch out for. And when in relationships too. I mean, again, people are, like you said, spacing out and having brain farts. I will not listen to you, and it's nothing personal. I do get impatient when people don't get to the point. That does bother me, and I don't necessarily dislike that about me, to be honest. I do like, I do like it when people get to the point, and I do want to encourage it. I'm just trying to learn how to do it politely. Right. But I remember when I was in a relationship, she would have to be like, "Hey, can you please put your phone down? Can you listen to me for a second?" And luckily, she was a teacher who was dealing with a lot of neurodivergent kids, so she knew. So what will work best back then is when she told me, "Hey, do you have a moment when you're done with that? Can we talk later? After that, when you're done with that, and then hey, I have to tell you something important. Do you have a minute?" And then I have to put everything down, focus, and then I'll know it, because you'll tell me something, and I will. I guess we get good also at. I don't know about you, but I think I got good at looking like I'm paying attention when I'm not at all. Oh, yeah. So people think that you heard them, and then they're like, "I talked about you this, the other," and I have good memory, but if I'm not paying attention, you told me nothing, you know? So that I told you this yesterday, that we have to be here at 2 p.m. or whatever. It's like, I never heard this. This never happened, you know? Yeah. Doctor's appointments are the hardest for me too, by the way. Oh, yeah. Those are the hardest.
I have a sort of caseworker for stuff like that.
Oh, nice.
I'm in a program where they give you certain accommodations because of.
That's awesome.
Really, all it is I have to specifically ask for it, but I tell them they ask, do you want a text or an email before your appointment? And I'm like, I need you to text me
and email me.
Yeah. It's I need you to tell me about the appointment and remind me the day.
Yes.
I ask for every kind of reminder just in case, you know what I mean? Because if I just have the mail, what if I'm not home that day, someone else takes my mail, forgets to give it to me. Yeah. Or if it's just text, sometimes my phone dies, sometimes I sleep through stuff, So I have them tell me the week of and the day of.
Oh my God, yeah.
In every form that they're allowed to.
Yes, and 15 minutes before if possible too. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
And sometimes they do it and it's super helpful, and sometimes they don't. That's what sucks too, because then you get used to a certain thing.
No, yeah, and that
really messes me up.
There's been times where I keep forgetting to do a specific kind of appointment. I have diabetes, so they check my I think it's the A1C. They check I get blood tested a lot.
Got it.
And the first time, I did it because it was part of the appointment, but the second time they were this is your next checkup. Just make sure you get it done before this day. And I was like, you have to give me an appointment.
That will never happen. That's not going to happen.
We do walk-ins. I'm I'm not going to remember to walk in.
That's it.
6 months later, I completely forgot to do it.
Yeah. And also, and I don't know if this happens to you, but also, first of all, making the appointment itself, getting on picking up the phone and calling and picking the right number and everything. I've also noticed that anything that I mildly don't like doing is also that much harder to do, and again, picking up the phone, talking to a stranger, waiting for the right tone to come up and the right number and clicking on that. I hate it so much that I'm just by nature, I'm gonna also like postpone it as much as I can.
Yeah.
And there's doctor's appointments that I haven't made for literally years. You know, like you have to check, and I have to like ask them to extend a referral because it's just a phone call that I don't make for years. I mean, that's how upset do you get when you miss an appointment because of it? I get so mad at myself.
You know, I do. I try to meet myself where I am, like with my ADHD and everything. So I don't like it, obviously.
Yeah.
I definitely try not to be lenient on myself, but at the same time, it's that thing of like, this is why I have so many contingencies, is to prepare for this thing. And so if one of those things was forgotten, then I do think I take it a little bit better. But if like I did all the things and then I missed it, that's what I was saying before. Of like, then in that instance, it was my fault for not following, that's when I take it a little bit harder, because it is a circumstance in which like I was accommodated as much as possible. I chose not to do the thing. One, like a sort of mantra I have in my head is like, when you're doing something you don't want to do, it always feels harder than not doing it. But how much harder? You know what I mean? Like I have this thing when I'm explaining it to people who I also think have executive dysfunction, and they're trying to learn how to cope with it. Of like, it's like when you choose to open a door for somebody. Like obviously that's going to take more energy than not doing it, but not a lot of it. It's never going to take as much energy to do a nice thing as you think it does, you know?
And it feels so good when you do remember it, or when you do write it down. Like, it feels so nice that you accomplished it, such a simple task or whatever. But those are really tough for me. And that's something I'm still working on. Like first of all, you're giving me good ideas, because I could ask them, listen, this is what I struggle with. It's on my chart. You can see it, so. So please help me out by doing this and that. And sometimes, the way insurances work, I mean, it takes so long to see like a specialist. It will take like 3 months, for example, when you make an appointment. And it is on my calendar, it is there, but then the day comes, and that day I didn't check my calendar, for whatever reason. And maybe they send me a reminder, but if they send me a reminder 3 days before, to me, that's a useless reminder to me, to be honest. It's either the night before or the day off will be. And by the way, sometimes that happens and I still have missed them. So those are really upsetting to me, because I was like, I wanted to go and I needed to go, and I just didn't. And
that's one of the.
That's tough.
Sorry.
No, please go ahead.
But that's.
I do that a lot too, by the way. I interrupt the crap out of people.
No, that is one of the things, like specifically, that's why I have a caseworker, is like you said before, like sometimes the struggle is just, it doesn't matter like how many things we set into precaution. It always starts with me deciding to do something. And that's specifically why I have deficit, is remembering to start something. So and
that's executive functioning.
That's why I have a caseworker. It's like literally, she's not there to help me remember. She's there to make sure it gets done in case I forget. Like she's not the one sending the doctor sends me the reminder in the mail. The doctor sends me the confirmation text. She once a month is the person to call me to make sure I'm making the appointment. That's great. Like that's what she does. So really like cool. The first week of every month she calls me and she says, I see on your chart that your doctor wants you to do this, this, and this. Let's schedule that today. That's awesome. So like if I forget to do it, she will schedule it for me. And that's connected to your health insurance and the doctors are all like... Yeah, I'm part of like a specific... I don't remember what it's called. It's a specific program because I have autism and ADHD. Got it. No, I mean, I wonder if that's something I could qualify for, because I could definitely... Because there's stuff that's always available to the public in general. Yeah. And then there's some stuff you have... I know that there's some stuff that... You have to ask for it. That's the tough part too, right? And there's some stuff that's like region specific. You know, like in LA County, they have Access, which is I don't think it's called medical transport, but I think it's technically essentially it's a taxi service specifically for the disabled. Got it. And you don't have to be like on disability to get it, but you do have to be like in the region to be applicable. Okay. And it's so anyone who has a disorder that specifically inhibits their ability to drive on their own is considered for the program. Got it. So it's aimed towards people that are physically disabled, but it is also available for like for people who have like Lou Gehrig's or not Lou Gehrig's. What's the one that Michael J. Fox has?
Parkinson's.
Parkinson's.
Yeah.
I don't know why I thought that was Lou Gehrig's. Or it's like also autistic people are applicable for the
Lou
program.
Gehrig's is Stephen Hawking, right? Isn't it?
I think so.
Yeah.
I always forget.
Yeah. I hope we got that right.
I hope so. Someone will correct us. Let us know in the comments.
Yeah.
My bad.
No, it's fine. Yeah, I mean, I also work in education. That's the day job. And a lot of my students are hesitant to go to the... yes, awesome. A lot of my students are hesitant to go to the Center for Students with Disabilities. And because they're like, no, I've done it without all my life. And I don't need it. And I'm like, yeah, you might be okay. So I tell them, you might be okay without it. You'll be fine. You'll get the B plus maybe. But if it's the difference between a B plus and an A minus, and maybe you don't need the extra time to take a test because of how smart you are, maybe you just need the extra time just to feel more relaxed and take the test at your own pace, you know? And I tell them there's no shame in it and whatever, but then I'm doing the same thing, I'm not asking for these extra accommodations either. I never have really, now that I think about it. I've never asked for extra accommodations.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like, now I'm like, oh, maybe that's something I could do, and whatever, if they say no, they say no. But if there's something they can do, especially for things like doctor's appointments, maybe, I don't know. I hope that'd be cool. I mean, that'd be really cool if they could help me out with that.
Yeah, and I think that's also part of having things on the lower side of symptoms, like with autism, there's a level system to diagnosis. Level 1 is essentially level 3 is the most severe cases of people who have specific physical detriments because of their autism. And then level 1 is people who level 1 are the people that would have been considered Asperger's or high functioning 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Which, a reminder, those terms are no longer applicable.
Got it. Asperger's isn't, but I had no idea, for example, there were levels where first of all, I didn't know that was the language used.
Yeah.
Level 1, level 2, level 3, is that it?
It's something that was introduced. If you're, consistent in the community and constantly going to seminars and stuff like that and reading DSM, you will have it's been a minute. You know what I mean? That was introduced in 2013, but socially, people are still coming to terms with that.
Yeah.
Socially, people are still trying to use high and low functioning, and it's not necessarily when it comes to that specific concept of high and low functioning. It's not necessarily. From my perspective as the person with autism, that terminology only benefits the people assessing me. It doesn't benefit me to quantify myself in that way.
Of course, yeah.
Because to me, I'm only looking at it as what I do and do not struggle with, whereas the person that's trying to deem me high or low functioning, what they're trying to discern is how much effort they need to put into me.
Yeah.
And that can affect the quality of my care,
Yeah.
And that's, I think, what I was getting at a second ago of just because someone is on the lower side of how severe their symptoms are does not mean that they are not in some way struggling. It is still miles apart from someone who doesn't have any of these things.
Yeah.
And I think that's always going to be a hard concept for people to grasp is when you don't have any of these things, you have so much that you don't think about. You know what I mean? Going back to, I don't know if you've heard of spoon theory.
I think if I learned it was from watching this. So say it. I'll remember the second you start talking about it probably.
So it's something that has been kind of...
Oh, yes, the spoon half full, is it the energy thing or not?
Yeah, it's the energy.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
So a lot of people would know it through TikTok and YouTube associated with autism, but the original concept was a paper written by somebody who had paraplegia, I think. He'll fix it if I'm wrong. But they were in a wheelchair.
Got it.
And so it was a thing of they were trying to tell the difference or explain the difference in existing between somebody with a disability and somebody without. And so they developed this theory about the 12 spoons, and the 12 spoons represent the amount of energy you put into the day. And using I often use ADHD as an example, and I use spoon theory to explain executive dysfunction. for somebody that doesn't have anything going on, like in their way, one spoon out of the 12 that they have might be spent on, they get up, they shower, they go downstairs, they eat breakfast, they go to work. That's all one decision for them.
Yeah.
For somebody with ADHD, for somebody with physical and mental disability, getting up out of the bed is one spoon.
Yeah.
Making sure that you showered and brushed your teeth is another spoon. Making sure you ate and drink water is another spoon. And then remembering to go to work on time is another spoon. So,
That's
like, what is one decision for somebody that doesn't have these detriments is 4 different processes for somebody that does.
Yeah.
So even in that context, even if it's not like to the same degree as, even if somebody with ADHD is not as severely, in that individual case, is not as severely inhibited as somebody who like is in a wheelchair, they still have more struggle than somebody that doesn't have anything going on.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And so while it is appropriate to understand the difference in what is necessary and what is needed for the individual, that does not mean that they should just be dismissed outright because they figured it out.
Of course, yeah.
Because, just figuring it out, just getting by is exhausting.
Yeah.
We could figure out how to do it without these. This is going back to like what I was saying about having help with like appointments. So we could try to get by, and it wouldn't be impossible, but that's a life spent expending more energy than anyone else, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's not about like making life easier, it's just like making life more palatable, like comfortable.
Yeah, I have I also feel like I have to I have a really close friend, Rafael Bono, who is in the autism spectrum, and we actually made a short film. He worked on my feature film with me.
Right.
He recorded sound for my feature film, but then we made a short based on his life, and it's called Quiet Hands, by the way. It was so cool because first of all, it was through the writing process, because I wrote it and directed it, but it was based on his life, right? So we would meet up, and I would write down, I would ask him stuff, and I would just learn so much about him, and and how he deals with the world and how he perceives it, and stuff that is hard for him to do. And even we explored the stimming, right? Like we explored that, and he actually showed me what it looks like, and we incorporated it into the short film as well. So that was a really cool thing. Like, it's been a really cool learning experience. But at times, I still kind of forget, because there's so much he can do, right? That you forget that, there's things he can't, or maybe that he struggles with, right? And you got to remember that. But you even me, I see him all the time, I talk to him regularly, I work with him, we collaborate. So I sometimes do forget, that there are things that he struggles with, and I need to remember that, hey, I think one day I think I asked him, is like, hey, we don't have a microphone for this, and then he's like, oh, that sucks. I'm like, no, can you get it? Yeah, I can. Okay, but can you get it at this time? Because we're recording at this time. He's like, okay, yeah. I'm like, all right, man. And that's it. He's like, dude, I take things literally. You need to tell me what you need.
Yeah.
And he was so right. I was. And, had to get out my own bullshit. I was trying to be polite about it by being subtle. And that from my family, our culture, or whatever, it is kind of considered impolite to ask for things directly, and it's more like, I think I'm kind of hungry,
right?
And which I don't want to stereotype, but it is kind of a Latin thing to do sometimes, I think, and with him I can't do that shit. I gotta be like, no, can you please get this microphone, because I don't have it and we need it. So, and that's what I need to do, So, and then it was over. He called me. He was like, dude, what the hell's going on? I'm like, and then we talked it out immediately. Like, I love you, man. I'm sorry. You're right. So that's also really cool about our relationship, is that we can have these conversations as well.
No, yeah, I have a specific story that I tell about that, where I had a roommate who ran a podcast, and he had 2 co-hosts, and one of them was somebody that at the time he was interested in going out with. And so one day after one of the recordings, to be polite to the other host, he says out loud, "Oh, I think that we're all gonna go out to eat." Or he's like, "Who's hungry?" He says something like that. Like he's trying to implicate the idea without. That way, he can comfortably be in a scenario where he's going out with this girl without making everyone else feel bad. He made the mistake of doing it in front of me, and so I was like, "Oh, I'm down." Because I hadn't eaten that day and I'm bored because I just sat there.
Got it. I'm so sorry because this is a space to do it. I did not hear a single part of that story. Can we please start over again? I am so sorry.
We were talking.
This is great, by the way.
You had referenced your autistic friend and like being.
Yes.
We're talking being subtle. I had a roommate who recorded a podcast and.
He was interested in dating the host.
And one of the hosts. There's two co-hosts.
Got it.
One he's interested in.
That's where I got lost. And that's where I was like.
So after one of the recordings, he's trying to be polite and he's trying to be subtle. So instead of asking her outright in front of everyone, he goes, "Man, I'm hungry. Who else is hungry?" And he knows that the other girl can't go, which is why he's doing it this way.
Nice.
You know?
Subtle. Yeah.
But I'm in the room. And
you're hungry.
Yeah, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm down." And so they go up. The two co-hosts go off, and they're talking to each other about something. They're saying bye to each other, and he leans to me. He's like, "Hey, I just wanted you to know, like, I was just saying everyone to be polite to this person, but this person's actually not going." And I know that he thinks he's explaining it to me, but what I'm hearing,
you can still come.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is like, we don't like this person. Don't let her know we don't like her. And I was like, "Oh, got it." And so I end up going with them on their date. And it isn't until we get home that I start thinking about it, because throughout it they have vibes with each other. They're trying to date each other.
Got it.
So, and I'm picking up on that.
So it was reciprocated,
as
thankfully.
Like an autistic, you know, I'm picking up on that pattern. And so when we get home, I'm like, "I just realized you were telling me not to come." and he was like, "Yeah, that's what I was explaining." And it was a funny moment for us because like the week before, he was asking me about my autism, and I was like, "I just think differently. You know, I come to conclusions differently than you do, and so there's things that I don't pick up on." And he's like, "That just sounds like everyone." Like, and so when this happened afterward, and I explained, he's like, "Yeah, that's what I was saying." And I was like, "So this is what I mean."
Got it.
When I say sometimes I don't pick up on it.
Yeah, no, that's super interesting. Yeah. But it's also interesting that you yourself caught it later. So is it because you've been working on it and you know you've learned so much about it that now later you can be like, "Oh, I did that thing."
It's hard to say. There's a lot of variables that connect to it. One of them being that I am considered a level 1 autistic person. So like, I do. You know, I am capable of coming to the conclusion. It's just, we never know like what leads to me doing it and what not.
Got it.
So it's always easier to be more blunt with me.
Definitely.
I think part of it is that it's something I have to work on because if I don't work on it, people won't understand that I'm struggling with it. Part of it is also just like something that comes with autism is the ability to pick up on patterns with certain, autistic people.
Yeah. For me, the thinking about interactions after the fact, I think it's also due to so impulse control is another thing I struggle with. And again, these are all things I'm learning still, but yeah, impulse control is my big thing. And of course, for comedy, it's a fantastic thing. It's a fantastic problem to have. I think sometimes people tell me, "Oh my God, Tourette is like your superpower. You know, you're so quick to say something witty, or and and something being funny and say something inappropriate." It can be a great tool for people trying to entertain, but sometimes you don't need to entertain people, and it can be problematic. And yeah, many times I've been like, "Brother, oh shit," and then. In the moment, I'm like, "No, it's funny. Like, relax, everybody." And then the next day, I'm like, "I should not have said that. That was freaking stupid." But yeah, that's I think what I need to. The stopping drinking has been helpful because I don't need to. I never because again, the only thing alcohol, it's not the only reason why I gave it up. It's also like it was like acid reflux. The hangovers were lasting like too long, even if I had like 2 beers. So, but one thing that it definitely has helped with is like not letting it influence my inhibitions in a social setting, and therefore feeling so shitty 2 days later, like, man, I should not have said that. And the only reason why I did was because of alcohol, you know?
Right.
So, not alcohol made me say it, but alcohol just lowered my inhibitions to do what I normally do,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, that's like the concept of superpowers is frustrating to me.
I get it. I get that too. I get it. Yeah. And by the way, so I get it, but also like I didn't mind him saying it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But it's also a way for me to see it. I agree with him, you know, but I get the superpower mental health problem. It's an issue.
Yeah, it's a thing of like I understand that it comes from a good place.
Exactly. Yeah,
you know, I'm not upset at this person for trying, but it's like when someone uses it towards me, I don't criticize them for saying that specifically.
Yeah.
But I do remind them, is like I appreciate that.
Yeah,
and I understand what you mean by that. I just want to make sure like. That's not all that it is.
Of
you know
course,
what I mean? Because when people only see it, there's so many things that are specific to this concept of separating. This is why I personally don't use high and low functioning anymore. Not just that it's not medically accepted anymore.
My friend also stopped me. He was like, don't say that. Yeah.
And this is what I mean by it only benefits them of like people want to separate who they are comfortable around and who they are willing to like forget about.
Yeah.
And that's what I hear when people use high and low functioning, when people use superpowers, like they're only interested in the parts that make them feel better.
Got it.
It's also the reason why I don't like shows like I almost said the name of this show. No.
it's a spectrum. It's such bullshit.
It's a great show. Watch every episode. Love on the Spectrum. The reality show.
Dude, I want to ask you some really inappropriate questions about that show, if you don't mind me asking. So for Love of a Spectrum, and at one point, and by the way, I don't do stand-up anymore. I actually stopped doing stand-up when I turned 35 because I found out I was going to be a dad. And then I was like, okay, my other dream, other than stand-up comedy, and stand-up comedy was going well, and I love it so much, but my other dream was to make a feature film. So I was like, my son's going to be born in 9 months, so I have 9 months to make a feature film. And we did it, and it did great, and it toured the festival circuit, and a bunch of people are in it. And we're looking out for distribution. We got an offer. It was terrible. But that's why I stopped doing stand-up. But I always write jokes, right? And I did put it down as a premise. I won't be telling it because, I'm not doing stand-up anymore, and I don't think it's a place for me to talk about it. On stage, maybe at an open mic will be probably the appropriate place to try to work it out. But it is a legit concern or question I have. How, and I'm nervous to ask it, but how, because we're talking about language earlier and what language can be offensive and, high functional functioning versus level 1, level 3. And then you watch a show like Love on the Spectrum, and they have a person who has autism with a person who has Down syndrome. How do you perceive that? What does that do? Like,
that was another thing. Like, I do think that what they were attempting was to expand the concept so that they weren't. The biggest criticism of the old show was that it was infantilizing. They're promoting that they're trying to showcase what it's like to date as an autistic person, but they were curating a very specific and stereotypical show. They weren't making a show for autistic people to watch. They're making shows for everything else, for everyone else to watch.
That's true. Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of things they did in the American version that was meant to be more open-minded and considerate. So I do think that's why they opened it. I don't remember if this is true about this specific person, but you can also have autism and Down syndrome at the same time.
That's true.
But they're not the same disorder. They're not connected that way. There's some people that theorize they are, but most studies that have looked into this have been disproven.
Nice. At the same time, there's also this YouTube channel called Special Books by Special Kids, something like that. I have seen quite a few couples that is a person with severe autism, and again, I don't even know if that's even appropriate to say severe, but whatever level, with dating a person with Down syndrome,
right?
And I guess, how does that happen? I mean, how does that work?
I mean, to a degree, like, often if people with either disorder or any disorder have some level of social functioning, which I do think is an acceptable phrasing, they're going to meet the same way anybody meets. You know what I mean? A lot of people think that I've seen recent campaigns about this concept with Down syndrome specifically. Like a lot of people think because someone has Down syndrome, they're completely incapable of socializing. But it's like there's comedians that have Down syndrome. There's actors and actresses that have Down syndrome.
Yes.
There's of course, can't remember what comes to mind, but maybe we can Google it. There's people that have like writing credits that have Down syndrome. Like
That's amazing.
It's, of course, there are a lot of things that are going to be different about their functioning and social functioning, and there's a lot of detriments. But that does, just because something is incredibly hard doesn't mean it's impossible.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I guess my question was like, I think you answered. Do people find that show offensive? Maybe not for that, but for that reason specifically, or just in general?
Not for that character specifically. And if anything, a lot of people have been using that. I say character, it's a reality show, but that's part of why I don't like. In general, that's my criticism of reality shows: is they turn people into characters. But I think when it comes to that person specifically, it's actually seen as something that's more open-minded to the concept of people with Down syndrome existing normally.
Got it.
Or like existing the way everyone else exists in like society. That is also, again, like one of the things that drives this show is like showing like we can exist in other spaces that aren't specifically for us and still be okay. Moreover, it's more just like what is the intent of the showmakers. Like they definitely do a lot better than they did in the British version, but at the same time, at the end of the day, they still are trying to show a specific side of autism because they know that's what people want to watch. And again, like that's where it gets a little bit more complicated, because it's like on one hand you have them peddling to the lowest common denominator. On the other hand, that is a side effect of a side effect. Like that's also on the part of people that aren't in these communities, not knowing enough about these communities. So like a lot of people argue like, well, isn't that important to showcase autistic people? It's like, yeah, but that's not what this show is doing. Like I said, like it's still a show made for people who don't understand and don't want to understand. Like the showmakers don't care if you don't know about autism. They're giving you something you want to see. One specific thing that I still maintain, because I can't remember the creator. There's an autistic creator who, like me, also did not like the American version, regardless of all the improvements they made. And he said because at their core, they're still being infantilizing. They're still trying to show, like, yeah, we can do it too. Like what he did was he took audio from the American version and he put it over a scene from.
Oh no! Like when Harry Met Sally or something?
No, he put it over a scene of James Bond. Daniel Craig's James Bond, the most recent film that he made. So you see this serious scene where he's like meeting up with an informant and it's like they're in a bar and he's making a stern face and the lighting is dim and dark. But the audio is like, Daniel likes trains. And it's like when you put that over anything, it sounds like and that's the thing.
Sorry, is that okay that I'm laughing?
No, that's fine. Like that was the point of it, was to point out like the ridiculousness of the show.
It's so crazy.
Yeah.
Oh my god, I'm sorry. Man.
No.
That's so ridiculous.
That's the thing, is like when people see it on this reality show, they don't see the ridiculousness of it. They think that that's appropriate.
Oh my god.
And I'm actually working on a joke.
That's the thing. That's the thing. That's another thing. We're comedians too, So we do see the funny angle of these things,
But so that was the criticism of this guy's video, was like people don't see the ridiculousness when the context is this guy has autism.
Yeah, and it's also, again, it's a difference between like laughing it because you get it versus laughing it because you don't, Yeah. So laughing at the thing versus laughing at ourselves, like.
And again, like there is a difference in experience between level 1, 2, and 3. But that does not mean that something should just be. That does not mean that they're not doing what they're doing. You know what I mean? And
cool.
so I remind, like, that just because these people might be considered on a lower level than I am, does not mean that what the show is doing is not infantile. Like they are still talking about them like they're,
it's exploitative.
10 years old.
Yeah.
And when I have this conversation, because there's actors who have autism and are functioning and I gotta stop. I keep saying function. I'm trying to. Like, there's people you didn't know had autism. There's people that didn't know themselves that they had autism. Like, Anthony Hopkins has autism.
Oh, that's true. Yeah.
And he didn't find out till, like, 5 years ago.
That's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy.
He's, like, 90, I think.
Yeah.
You know? And so I tell him, he's like, imagine people thinking about Anthony Hopkins the way they think about these people on the show.
Yeah.
You know? One of the things when people ask me about it and they want to explain it, I was like, if you are having a hard time understanding everything else I've said, then think about this. Does this show make you want to date somebody with autism? And, you know, and usually, like, when I ask that, they get it. Like, no, they don't.
Yeah. And by the way, it was interesting with Anthony Hopkins, because when you say Anthony Hopkins has autism and you look back, and I'm like, oh, yeah. That makes total sense. Yeah.
There's a lot of people Dan Aykroyd has autism. Dan Aykroyd from SNL, which I think is funny because they recently made a movie about the first episode of SNL. And there's someone playing Dan Aykroyd, and he speaks in such a specific way that my favorite thing isn't his portrayal. It's the interviews done for the movie.
Okay.
Because they're interviewing the guy that played Dan Aykroyd, and he's like, yeah, cool. Dan Aykroyd had such a specific way of talking. He just had this vibe to him that was just like, he didn't care. And I'm like, it's because he's autistic.
That's so
it's so funny to watch.
That's so interesting, yeah.
And that's also, like, not an unknown. Like, I don't think he advocates necessarily. Like, he's not going to marches or anything. But he also has not tried to hide it, as far as I can tell. Like, he doesn't get mad if people talk about it. It's it's a thing that can be well known if you're paying attention. You know.
Yeah.
You mentioned that you are an extrovert. I don't think that I'm introverted, but I do experience burnout very quickly.
Yeah.
And I think that's always, I don't know if you relate to this. It's hard to explain that to people. It's like, I'm not physically tired. And it's not that I don't want to be there anymore. Or, you know, it's not that I dislike being there anymore. It's more just like I've reached a point where the physical attributes of my disorder are overwhelming the social aspects of it. Like, when I experience social burnout, I'm not sleepy. It's what I explain to people is like, it's not that I don't want to be here. It's more that, like, I am now only focused on my physical needs in this moment. And so those are distracting me from caring about anybody else around me. You know what I mean? Like when I'm experiencing burnout, I want to go home. I want to drink water. I want to watch. Like, I don't want to try to conversate anymore. I only want to think about stuff I'm interested in.
Yeah.
So, like, I want to go home and watch my shows. You know what I mean?
Yes. No, I get that. And that, even that definition, extrovert. Like, I think the actual definition is that you get energized by people. Yeah. And I do, but I also need a break. There's a point where I need a break as well.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, so that happens. Or when I, so there's also when I do kind of see myself, you know, suppressing my tics, but it's almost like it happens subconsciously. I don't know. I just, like, it's not like I decide to suppress it, but sometimes I'm like, you know, I do it and I'm like, that person will never know that I have Tourette's. And then afterwards, I'm like in my car twitching like crazy, you know, and I need that time too, you know. So that's something. Again, I'm still figuring this stuff out, and the language is ever evolving, and the field is ever evolving. So yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of things that I still yet to have to learn about it.
Even just in looking into it, I've seen a lot of, you know, because we've mentioned. So there's different, from what I understand, there's a difference in what is considered a tic. Like, what am I getting at? Yeah. Stimming is a form of, it can also be referred to as a tic, but it's not the same thing as a concept.
Got it. No, yeah. That's why the short is called quiet hands, because my friend did it with this, you know, like he would do a movement with his hands. And yeah, that was the stimming that he used to do. And his grandma used to tell him, hey, Rafi, remember, quiet hands. As in, like, don't do it. Yeah. You know, so that's what we called it that.
I was excited to have you on because, again, like, I don't have Tourette's, but I've had friends in the past that have had Tourette's. And I've, for some reason, had a lot of conversations with people who don't believe in Tourette's.
Wow.
And it's such a specific thing to explain, you know. One thing that I found interesting about the concept was, like, the distinction between what Tourette's is and, like, other forms of tic and stimming. Like with autism, there's echolalia, there's negative and positive stimming. You know, there's
What is the echolalia a sound thing?
Echolalia, yeah, is like a verbal stim.
Got it.
So echolalia,
Which sounds almost like Tourette's, like the verbal tics.
that's the thing.
Yeah,
and that's part of what I found interesting. Is like, so what the distinction is with echolalia, it is a reaction. It's not similar to Tourette's. It is technically involuntary, but it is not coming from the same source.
Yeah.
From what I understand, there's a physical literally a physical component to Tourette's. What I saw consistently in the descriptions of Tourette's was it affects the nervous system.
Yeah.
Like in that sense, it's physically involuntary.
Got it. No, it sounds like a analogous structure. So I don't know when you took like high school bio, but it's like a bat has wings and can fly. A bird has wings and can fly, but those two are completely different animals. You know.
Exactly.
Yeah, and they use completely different methods to fly. You know.
Like
and structures.
Tourette's is physically involuntary. Echolalia is just like we do it without thinking.
Got it. And I think what I have is corporelia. I don't even know.
Yeah,
See, I'm still learning these things.
I found out there's more than one. Like I thought they were all called echolalia, and it's like no, there's different things. Echolalia is a verbal tic that is a response to stimuli. Copulalia is something different. I didn't.
No, but it's the physical one, I guess.
Yeah.
And I'm learning these things too. And again, joining the community has helped a little bit. Mostly it's like people just complaining, and which is fine. That's the place to do it. But it's more the people like, hey, what do you guys do about this tic? And people are like, nothing, you know.
Yeah.
And that's how it goes every single time. But it's good in the sense that people getting each other, and again, also especially who are adults with Tourette's, a lot of them got it later in life, so that has been helpful to know there's more people like me. There's also this thing called TicCon. You know, you can go to like conferences for people with Tourette's, and that I think will be a cool, interesting experience. At the same time, people with Tourette's trigger my Tourette's so much. So I don't know. Like I actually can't watch Tourette's content, and they just started a new show on like A&E or Lifetime or something.
I know
with the girl with Tourette's syndrome.
She's a TikToker,
and it's like. Some people will start sending me Tourette's content, you know, because I knew I had it, and I had to tell them, dude, can you not send me that anymore? That's not offend me. It's just I just go crazy, you know.
So yeah, that was the thing that was like, I think that is the difference between Tourette's tics and like the echolalia is, or even like the physical, because I also have physical tics, but they're.
I think what you mean is that's the difference between Tourette's echolalia and autism echolalia. I think that's what you want to say. Okay.
So, yeah. Because I am also still learning.
The same.
Nobody knows everything.
I have never heard echolalia before, to be honest. First
the
time.
difference in the tics is with my echolalia. With echolalia, it's something being repeated. I'm doing something I've absorbed from someone else.
Yes.
Where from what I understand, Tourette's is more of a literal physical reaction. Like I haven't. That was something that I was concerned about because of my OCD. Is like sometimes I have a neck twitch.
You do.
Yeah,
okay.
But it's a reaction to certain stimuli. Like if something makes me uncomfortable, I twitch.
Yes.
And that's me channeling that uncomfortability.
Yeah. Can I say something about that? Because I do want to address this too. A lot of people are sensitive to sound, for example, right? My sensitivity, a lot of it has to do with sensory, like touch, you know? Like I feel like sometimes my twitches come from the fact that I'm trying to run away from my own clothes, you know?
Right.
Like I just can feel every single fiber of this touching my neck. I feel it the whole time. Right now I'm feeling this because I'm talking about it, you know? So things like that drive me crazy. Another thing that I do is we're talking about like making sounds. For example, I was listening to this, just in preparation for this, I wanted to like watch an episode and you were like, oh, sometimes I go spacey or I feel spacey. You know, you were saying that. I was like, Kevin Spacey. You know, like it happened. There's word association. Like I do that all the time. And now my brother-in-law does that too. And we tend to believe that he might also have certain qualities. We
Right.
suspect that he might be in the spectrum. He actually thinks he is too, but he hasn't addressed and doesn't care for it. That's fine. But it took me watching Mark Norman do the same thing to be like, okay, all right. So it is helpful. It is helpful to see people dealing with the same thing. It's
Right.
just,
Yeah.
It's just I don't know. It's like a warm fuzzy feeling. It's like, oh, okay, I do that. You know.
Yeah. And so I don't remember what my original.
You were about
But
the neck
so that
thing.
I think is like that is something that people have a hard time understanding about the physical component. Like so with my with echolalia, it is like what you were explaining right now. It's different because you were making an association with something versus like from what I understand from the research. Your actual tics are like a physical, like there's a nerve being pinched physically that's causing like the reaction.
Got it.
That's my basic understanding based on like, the stuff like Google for the episode.
People describe,
I don't want to like misrepresent anything.
No, but what I've heard makes a lot of sense to me. Is like Tourette's is like an itch that you want to scratch, you know? So you could suppress it and not scratch it, but it feels just it's the only thing you're gonna be thinking about, and it's such a relief to scratch it. There are things that so say again, I'm talking about it, so I start twitching. Also when I'm pausing, when I'm thinking, I twitch a lot. There are things also that make the tics go completely away. Like I was getting this when I got this tattoo. Took 3 hours, and it was the most relaxing 3 hours of my life, I think. I didn't move a single muscle, nothing.
Right.
Because there's so much stimulus on that very same spot that everything's taken care of. It's the only thing I could feel. So it's like every other feeling went away. So it's a fascinating field. I like learning about it. Yeah.
Yeah. No, yeah, I think that's really interesting. That reminds me of, I don't know, a bunch of weird random facts. Like, for some reason, that reminded me of this thing that I've heard. I don't want to claim it as fact, but I've heard it from. It reminded me of people with stuttering disorders, because supposedly, beyond also like going like speech therapy and things like that, supposedly one way to mask the tic or the stutter is to use a falsetto voice. Yeah. Because you're using a different part of the brain than your speech center. You're using something to remember. I don't remember exactly how it's explained, but because you're using a different part of your motor functioning, it reacts differently, and you can speak without stuttering if you're speaking.
Yeah, or when
allegedly,
they sing. Also when they sing too.
Yes, that's what I've heard.
Yeah.
Allegedly, like Marilyn Monroe had a stutter, and that's why she talked the way she talked, was because that was the only way she can get through sentences and like act, without stuttering publicly. I also found out she's Latino and she's Mexican. So
Madonna is.
No, Marilyn Monroe.
Sorry, that's who I meant, and that's who I meant. That's the thing. I meant Marilyn Monroe.
Imagine
Madonna.
So Madonna, that'd be hilarious.
Entonces Marilyn.
Allegedly, like she was discovered in Mexico. Her parents are.
Yeah, Marilu se llama.
I don't know if her lineage like extends like. I think it's one of those scenarios where like her parents or her great grandparents immigrated there. I just know she was discovered in Mexico.
Marilyn Monroe, crazy. Wonder Woman, she was Mexican.
Yeah, I found that out too. There's so many people that I didn't realize.
She came out late with that. Yeah, pretty late, but I'm glad she did though.
That's a weird part of like modern entertainment and media is like how recent that era was of like hiding it in order to get acknowledged. And then like you hit 2005 and like you either can hide it to be taken seriously outside this community or you lean into it to bank off this community, like with certain comedians, that we're not going to get into old internet beefs.
No worries. How's your spoon system going?
This is low. We've been talking for a while. I don't know.
We can whenever you want, huh?
I don't know how long the episode's going to be, but we've been here like 3 hours, right? Like
definitely.
Thank you for being on.
Thank you for inviting me.
We gotta cut it short. I don't know if you see how tired we are. We've been at it a while.
Cut it long.
Physically cut it short. Edit it. It's like 5 minutes. No. But yeah, thank you for being on. This was great. This was interesting. A part of me was worried that like we'd have so I think that there's a concept where like autistic people trigger each other, trans people trigger each other, and then we both have ADHD.
Yeah.
That's why I was bringing up echolalia. I was like, I didn't want to trigger your tics with my echolalia.
No, and please, and I haven't seen them. First of all,
because I do have not tics, but I have like stims when I'm tired, and that's one of them. Is I do that.
Yeah.
Like,
and you could do it right now if you wanted to, right?
That's what. That's what I was trying to make a joke about before. Was like when I see someone do that specific thing, my echolalia wants to do that because they're seeing it.
Yeah. Well, I'm just saying, you're welcome to join the party.
Anyway.
Yeah.
Thank you for me. You have a movie that you're able to.
Yes. So my feature film, Alta California, shot mostly with stand-up comedians from the LA and Orange County scenes. We shot it in Mexico.
Our good friend Ricky's in it.
Yes, Ricky's in it. Ramon Hernandez is in it. Daniel Zambrano. Who else that you know? A bunch of people. And then, we've toured with the movie for like a year of film festivals. It won some awards, even though we shot it only for $5,000 and competing against movies made for millions of dollars. It did really well. We sold at the Chinese theater. I'm looking for distribution right now, trying to see that. I may just self-distribute in the very, very near future. So Alta California, if you could check that out, that'd be awesome. And I have that short coming out as well, Quiet Hands. And nice. So that's it. I got merch. You got merch.
If you've watched till the end, thank you for that. Appreciate it. Make sure to leave a comment. Who's an actor you just found out was neurodivergent? Because there's so many.
I like that.
Like, I just found out...
Billie Eilish has Tourette's. That's a new one.
Billie Eilish has Tourette's. I found out... There's someone else that I found out has OCD. It doesn't matter. You tell me, and then maybe we'll shout it out next time.
Tell us about some famous people who have things. Famous people only, please.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Okay.